Hi, this is David from David's Broken Note, and today we're going to show you what we do for our restringing service as part of also our restring subscription. So we'll walk you through a little bit of the process, kind of explain the reasons why we do things the way we do, show you some of the tools that we use, and we hope you guys will consider maybe signing up with the restring subscription service that we offer. So let's show you some of the tools that we use for our restringing subscription service. So well, obviously you'll need a set of strings. I like to lay them out so that way it's easy to grab the next one after another as I put them on the guitar. Then a handy tool that I only found out recently within the last year or so, and I wish I'd had it a long time ago, what they call the string stretcher. You can find these guys on Amazon, and basically the way that they work, when you put the string on the guitar and then use these two pivot points to stretch the string, and you essentially run it all the way up and run it all the way back while applying pressure. So it essentially stretches the strings evenly all the way up and down, so that way you don't have as much of an issue with tuning. So every time you get those new sets of strings, you got to have that couple of days of really kind of tuning in, so that way the instrument isn't going to keep constantly going out, in and out of tune. So next, I like Dunlop's 65 guitar polish and cleaner. It works really well. And as well, Dunlop's, their lemon oil will add to the fingerboard as well as the bridge. Any guitar that doesn't have a lacquered or a finished surface on top of wood, I'll add that for the bridge and the fingerboard. Then just a little very, very soft duster, so it's just nice to be able to clean up the top of the guitar as well as up at the tuning machines. Always tons of dust there. 4/0 steel wool. We don't need a lot of it, but just so you guys can kind of see what it looks like. Fantastic. It polishes up your fingerboard, polishes up your frets. I don't use it on the bridge just because I don't want to scratch the top. It can and will scratch your finish, so keep it away from any major areas like that. String winder just makes it easier on your fingers, so that way you're not just twist, 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 and your wrist gets tired. So something very, very inexpensive tool. Some pliers to be able to cut the strings once we've got it all attached to the body. I have a set of nut drivers for the tuners themselves. Depending on what type of tuner you have, you may or may not need some of these, but having a couple different sizes just makes it nice. 10 millimeter is usually the standard for the most guitars that I have coming in that have a threaded nut. So having this, when you take the strings off, it just makes it nice so you can tighten up that nut so your tuners aren't going to get loose and rock around inside your headstock. The tool that I have, or the bench I should say that I have the guitar on, I have a vise that has these very, very soft cushions that hold the neck on the bench for me. So for me, it works great, but for you, maybe something like a neck rest, inexpensive piece of wood that's just got cork, so it's very soft, and it basically holds the guitar for you in place. So it just makes it a little bit easier. So if you don't want to spend the money like I did for the vise, this is a fantastic alternative, and they even make smaller versions of these. So consider a neck rocker is what they call this, or a neck rest. Something like that makes it infinitely easier for doing this at home. And then just a standard pencil. Really, I just want the graphite in the pencil, or the pencil lead. So I'm going to add that into the nut, so that way it adds a little bit of lubrication to the strings as they slide through it. So that way it just makes it better for tuning stability and less likely that the strings are going to get caught. Okay, so now that we've got all of our tools, and we've got, as I was saying earlier, this is the vise that holds my guitar for me. So if you guys are looking for something that's even better than the neck rocker and you're willing to spend the money, these things are amazing. So again, these little soft pads, that way it's not going to damage the finish, and it just holds this for me, basically a third arm, so it gives me lots of room to be able to unwind the strings and pull out the bridge pins. So fantastic tool if you're considering it. So we're going to just start off by unwinding the string. Cool. Looks like that string was pretty much on its way out. relieving pressure and it still snapped, there may have been a sharp edge in the nut, so we'll try and address that as well. But chances are, if I was releasing pressure, then this string was just on its way out if it was going to snap. So it's a good thing that we're replacing it. But we got to remove this last little bit. There we go. So now that we've got the strings off of the tuning heads, I'm going to come in with our nut driver. I'm going to tighten all these pieces. Again, not all guitars have these, but usually more expensive tuners, this is pretty common. So Grovers, Shalers, they tend to have some sort of a nut driver. Like it's just a threaded piece that goes in and locks into the back. So that way it just compresses it. So you don't want to go hard because then it'll squish into your finish in your wood. You just want to snug it up so that way it's not loose and rattling. And so all these snugged up, great. Then easy opportunity now to be able to come in and just dust. This is always where a lot of dust tends to build up, and just go through the neck. And that's very, very simple. Just removing the strings and addressing the tuners. Now we're going to come down to the bridge. I'm going to adjust my camera for that. So this is ebony for the fingerboard and ebony for the bridge. Both fantastic wood. I like the look and I like the tone that I'll get with an ebony fingerboard and bridge. And it does not have a finish on either. So I'll add, anytime I replace the strings or I take off the old, I'll add some lemon oil to the fingerboard, remove the saddle, add some lemon oil to the bridge. I'm going to let this sit for the bridge for the time being. Grab a little bit of the 4/0 steel wool. You don't need much. Just make a little ball. And I'm going to spread the lemon oil with the steel wool. At the same time, I'm going to be polishing the wood as well as the frets. Some fingerboards require more work than others. It just depends on, is the last time that you did this. I'll do this job for a guitar 4 times a year, just so that way it keeps sounding great, and that way the lemon oil is keeping the fingerboard nice and hydrated. I don't want it to crack, or I don't want my the ends of the fret ends to start poking out because the wood is shrinking. So it's a great idea. Do it a couple of times a year, and the guitar will hopefully outlive us all. I want to get both sides of the fret, really spread that lemon oil around. I'll come back with a cleaning cloth and you'll see just what had already been on the fingerboard. And this isn't a particularly dirty fingerboard, but you'll see what's been building up over time. It's not a lot. It's not a huge amount of gunk that was on the player's hands, but there's a little bit there. Now that fingerboard is good to go. So, come down to the bridge, and I'm just going to spread the lemon oil around. And we'll put the saddle back in. Double check. This is a compensated saddle, so you make sure you put it in the right way to where you have this little segmented section is for the treble side. So make sure you put that in, otherwise your intonation might be off. All right, now we're at the portion where we're going to start putting some strings onto the guitar. Okay, I like to start with the bass side and work my way up to the treble. Either or is fine. Start with our low E string. And when putting the ball end into the bridge, there's a plate, there's a piece of wood on the inside. So essentially you have the bridge, the top of the guitar, and on the inside what they call the bridge plate. And that is essentially your cushion that the ball ends rest upon. And when it comes in at odd angles, it chews up your bridge plate. And we don't want that. We want that bridge plate to last as long as possible, because if it starts getting chewed up, then eventually your strings will start working its way through your guitar, and they can fly out. But not necessarily the worst result is that it's just going to chew out chunks and chunks and chunks of the guitar, and it's a difficult job to repair over time. So what I like to do, I get our string end, and we have our left and right side of the rounded section, and I like to bend it pretty close to about 45, 90 degrees. Anywhere in that range is just fine, but ultimately I just want to put a bend to it, so that way when I put it into the string, that rounded edge is what's resting up against the bridge plate, so it does less damage over time. So aim as best as you can, come in with your bridge pin, and I want it to be tight, so I'm pulling the string as I'm putting in the bridge pin so I can get that rounded section up against the bridge plate. I pull the string all the way through, and then I want to give myself a couple of windings. So different guitars have different heights of tuning machines. So if you have a particularly low or short tuning head, then you might want to do at the most maybe about 1 post, or maybe 3/4 of a post length. If you've got higher ones, then you do a post, maybe a post and a half. So I usually start with the thicker strings because they are fatter. The windings are going to be fat. I'll do about a post's length. And then I get to the thinner and thinner strings, I'll do a post, post and a half. So that way I've got at least 3 windings around the post. I'm going to start off by getting into a 90-degree angle. I'm going to bend it all the way, and then I'm going to do what we call a locking tie, so that way it's less likely the string is going to come undone. So essentially, you wrap the string underneath, you bend it over, and it locks the string physically up against the post, so that way it can't go anywhere. If you don't have locking tuners, then this is a very, very inexpensive way to essentially achieve the same result, to where the string just isn't going to come undone. And I'll come in, I'll clip, and that string is good to go. We'll tune up the guitar once I have all 6 strings on. There's the E, I'll go to the A string. So then the same thing, come in, I want to bend the ball end of the string, bring it into the post, measure about a post's length, pull it back, that'll be my windings. There's my 90 degrees. And I'm going to bring the string underneath and back over. And there's my lock up against the post. Here's a zoom in of the fingerboard or the headstocks. That way you can see the lock of the strings up against the posts. And now we're going to get to the strings and the nut with the pencil lead. You can do this before you get the strings on. That's fine. I just want to add a little bit of lead into the nut. I'm putting it mostly right in the front. If you have a mechanical pencil, it's a little nicer than something as fat as this, but if I put a little bit in the front and then I tighten it, it pulls it right where I need it. If you have a mechanical pencil lead, that works great too, because it's a little skinnier, especially for the high strings. I'm going to crush up a little bit of lead. Put a little in the front. I'm going to put a little on top and come in with something skinny that'll push that lead inside of there. So you can use some of those clippings of the old string. And that just shoves it right in. The high E was definitely the one that I was worried about, since that's the string that snapped when I was relieving tension. So I want to put a lot in there just to be very certain there's no sharp edge that's catching the string. Okay, now we're going to grab a tuner, tune the guitar up, and we'll see how it sounds when it's all set. So I've got this little Chromatic Tuner. Plenty of good manufacturers out there that make these. Dario makes a great one. Peterson, the strobe tuners, they make one. Very, very nice, especially for those who are very picky about their tunings. But you don't need something super, super fancy. There we go. So we're not done. We're going to next use the string stretcher to be able to stretch the string all the way up and all the way down, and we'll do that at least twice, and then we'll call the tuning actually done. So I'll turn this off in the meantime. Change my camera angle so you can see how we do it. The nice thing, the design, is that I can bring the pivot all the way up to the nut, and I can bring it all the way back to the saddle, so the entire string at the 2 points of contact are being stretched. And I'll do that to all 6 of the strings. The thicker strings, you can add a little bit more pressure for tilting back for the pivot because they're thicker strings. But as I go up the neck, I go a little less, little less, little less, especially for the plain steels, the B and the E. We don't want to add too much because it's very easy to go too far and snap the string. And it is down, what was at E, now it is down to D, so it went down 2 steps. That's pretty good. We stretched the string out fairly well. We'll do that one more time, and then the string should be fairly well worn in at that point. You may have to do a little bit more. It depends on the strings that you're using. Not all strings, sadly, are made the same. And it may be possible that it could be your neck that's moving as well. We did take off all of the strings, so all the pressure and tension was gone. And as we put the strings back on, your neck is also going to move as it's being pulled. So it's possible the strings aren't the problem, so you might just have to give it a little bit of time to let the neck settle and then come back and tune, because it doesn't matter how much you stretch the strings if the neck is moving. So you got to be a little patient with it. All right, we're back in tune. Do the process one more time and tune up, and then we should be good to go. I keep my finger at the nut, my thumb, because as I'm applying pressure and I come up, it will pull the string out of the nut depending on what kind of a depth yours is cut. So I like to just keep my finger here so it doesn't fly off. Just kind of secure it a little bit and it's less likely to keep on slipping. And if there's hypothetically a sharp edge, I don't want it to put a kink in my string and possibly snap it over in the future. And now we're down to D sharp almost, so it only went down a half step rather than a full. So that's good. That means the string isn't stretching as much. This is only down to maybe 20 some odd cents for the A, so that's great. The less the string stretches will be reflected in the tuner and how much you need to tune it back up. So that means the stretching process is just about done. If your strings constantly are going flat, then you may end up having to replace the strings with maybe a better manufacturer, or get your neck checked out if it happens to keep on moving. And there we go. She is in tune. The last step before I would give this back to a customer, this guitar top was already pretty clean because we did a restring on it a couple of months ago, and it predominantly gets stored in the case. So it's a pretty safe guitar. But usually when I have the strings off, I'll add a little bit of our Dunlop spray, but for this one, it didn't need it under the strings. It's pretty clean. But as a last step, I'll add a little bit just to polish up the body, especially for where any lemon oil that might have come off of the tongue over the body or any of the bridge. I want to clean up that lemon oil. Let's check the rest of the body. So it gives us an opportunity to look at the sides, look at the back, see if we notice anything. The benefit of our restringing subscription service, it just gives a professional eye on the guitar more often. Protect your investment, essentially. That way, if we see anything wrong, we'll let you know. If we see any dryness of the fingerboard and your frets are starting to poke out, then we know that we want to have some more humidification at home. Having a humidifier inside the case is an absolute necessity, even here in California, even in my workshop. If I don't have my humidifier going in the workshop, it could easily get down to 20%, even less if it gets hot enough. And you want to keep it at a relative 45 to 55% humidity. So if you don't have one at home, absolutely recommend it. The lemon oil helps as well because it keeps your fingerboard nice and slick and at the same time hydrated. But for the body, it does nothing for the body. So you've got to have something inside the case or inside the room where it's stored in order to keep the guitar hydrated so it doesn't shrink and crack on you. So again, benefit of our restringing subscription, we just see the guitar more often and keep an eye on your investment. So that way it's less likely that any damage might happen just because, if you get busy or you don't have the opportunity to pay as much attention to it as you would like, we're happy to do that for you. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. It was a pleasure to get this thing up and running, and we'll hand it off to the customer and hopefully they'll be happy with it, and we'll see them again when it's ready to change those strings in a couple of months.